heading south. Hamas is holding roughly 500,000 liters of fuel right now as we speak, next to Rafah crossing. Everything can be checked. In any discussion about lack of fuel, your demands should be directed at Hamas. Israel has approved dozens of more than dozens, of daily trucks of humanitarian supplies, including food, water, and medical equipment. But Israel refuses to supply the enemy, Hamas, with any aid, in accordance with international law. Hamas is the root cause of the situation in Gaza. Yet, you continue to insist on calling this meeting a discussion of the Palestinian question? Can anyone here provide a solution? Hamas controls Gaza? Calling for an immediate ceasefire is ultimately asking to tie Israel's hands and keep Hamas's rule in Gaza. Is this the future that you want for the people of Gaza? I'm sorry to say, but should this council have existed on June 6, 1944, it would be intensely debating how much electricity and fuel the citizens of Munich had as the Allies approached the shores of Normandy. This council would be fixated on debating the death toll of Germans versus British casualties. This council would be calling for a ceasefire before the Russians retook Stalingrad. We all know Hamas's intentions, and we all know that should they be given another chance, they will commit such atrocities again over again. Israel's operation in Gaza is not, I reiterate, is not a response to October 7th. It is an act of self-defense to ensure our future. Mr. President, the Israeli people are strong. We are unbreakable, and we are going nowhere. Many have tried to destroy us, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Nazis, to name just a few. But none have succeeded, and the Iranian Reich will be no different. Israel will prevail, God willing. We will bring our hostages home, and the citizens of the Jewish state will live in peace and freedom. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the permanent representative of the State of Israel for his statement. And now I give the floor to the...
Mr. President, I would like to thank Mr. Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA. I thank Ms. Catherine Russell, the Executive Director of UNICEF, and Ms. Lisa Doughton, Director from OCHA. I am pleased to make this statement on behalf of the Arab Group in New York. We address the Council today in this emergency session after the members of the General Assembly of the United Nations have voted to adopt a resolution as part of the 10th emergency session of the General Assembly on the Israeli illegal actions in East Jerusalem and the occupied Palestinian territory that Jordan co-sponsored as the chair of the Arab Group for October. Mr. President, the Arab Group and the ONU have not been able to shoulder its responsibility towards the maintenance of international peace and security and stop the war against our people in Gaza. Mr. President, the adoption by the GA of this resolution has sent a clear message that the international community has stood with justice and the protection of innocent civilians and adherence to legal, humanitarian, and legitimate obligations, and with the immediate stop of the raging Israeli war against Gaza, ending war crimes and the killing of defenseless innocent civilians, and ending the destruction of homes, civil facilities, hospitals, houses of worship, and infrastructure. And if this resolution is biased towards anything or anyone, it is biased towards justice, humanity, and right. Protection of all humanitarian civil facilities, including hospitals and houses of worship. 2, demands that all parties comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law. 3. Provision of humanitarian assistance, including supplies and basic services to all civilians that need them in the Gaza Strip. 4. Firmly rejecting any attempt at the forced transfer of the Palestinian civilian population and the call for the immediate and unconditional release of all civilians who are being illegally held captive. Mr. President, the Arab group calls that the international community make effort to bring pressure to bear for the war. This is as a result of Israel obstructing these trucks. Here, we stress that the Arab Republic of Egypt has not spared any effort to ensure the expeditious delivery of aid and humanitarian assistance to the brothers and sisters in Gaza, despite the operational and logistical obstacles by Israel in the way of access for political considerations and false security pretexts, and Israel's continued threatening to shell the Rafah crossing. Mr. President, the continuation of the raging Israeli war against Gaza and the ensuing humanitarian disaster threatens a spillover effect into the region. Here, we warn against this impact and its repercussions on the security and stability of the region and the whole world. Here, we call for a cessation of Israeli aggression on Syrian territory, and a cessation on the Lebanese borders, and a cessation of Israeli violations on villages in the south of Lebanon that has led to the displacement of 30,000 Lebanese and has killed more than 50 individuals, in addition to directly targeting the centers of the Lebanese armed forces and UNIFIL, and the killing of journalists. Mr. President, the war on Gaza is in a new phase, bringing more destruction, killing, and oppression against the people of Gaza. Way more than what we have seen in the past few days. And when the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jordan, Mr. Safadi, when he spoke at the Council last Tuesday, the total number of casualties of Palestinian civilians was 6,000 martyrs. Today, less than a week after that, the number of victims is 8,300 martyrs, including more than 3,400 children and 2,100 women, in addition to more than 2,000 individuals under the rubble for so many days now. The killing will not stop as long as Israel hears from some justifications for its crimes. It is given coverage, protection, without any accountability. Unfortunately, as long as this cover-up continues, as long as silence on its actions continues, Israel will be emboldened and will continue to commit such acts in total impunity. Mr. President, isn't it time for human conscience to wake up to the scenes that we watch every day, every minute, every hour? Carnage, destruction in Gaza. Isn't it time for this council to heed the cries for help from the people of Gaza? They have no safe place to go to shelter from the Israeli bombardment and its destruction. Their homes, their hospitals, and their houses of worship have come down tumbling on their heads while they're inside, and even UN facilities have been also shelled. 1.4 million of the people of Gaza have left their homes and their neighborhoods. This deafening silence needs to stop. Isn't it time for the Council to heed the calls of human conscience? And we thank the Secretary General for his words, despite all the attacks that he unfairly is at the receiving end of when he calls for a ceasefire and the delivery of medical and humanitarian aids and the respect of international law and the protection of civilians and UN aid agencies. I don't know why is he being attacked for these positions, these fair positions of His Excellency the Secretary General. Isn't it time for your council to give prevalence to the principles of justice and humanity, and to say to Israel that this transfer is a crime that cannot be overlooked? The choice, either you die in the north of Gaza or be transferred to the south of Gaza to be also killed over there, this shouldn't be a choice. The Council should not accept this. Isn't it time for the Council to say to Israel that human life is sacred regardless of someone's religion, ethnicity, or origin? Isn't it time to protect UN facilities and the hospitals and infrastructure and facilities of Gaza? Isn't it time for the Council to heed the calls of humanitarian agencies that Mr. Lazzarini and Ms. Russell and Ms. Doughton have so clearly communicated to you to end this humanitarian crisis in Gaza? Isn't it time for the Council to hold Israel legally accountable and to punish Israel for the killing, ethnic cleansing, war crimes committed by Israel in Gaza, reminding that these crimes committed, as the international community watches, are being documented daily by international accountability mechanisms? Isn't it time for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibilities and to respect its principles and the purposes of the UN as set forth in the Charter? Isn't it time for the Council to work to stop the war and aggression and to protect our Palestinian people in Gaza and all the occupied Palestinian territory as well? This is the choice of this Council at a very pivotal point in the history of this organization. Mr. President, the Arab group reaffirms that the just, comprehensive, and lasting peace in accordance with the adopted terms of reference and the Arab Peace Initiative is a strategic Arab choice. The only means for this choice to be implemented is the establishment of an independent Palestinian state that is sovereign with occupied Jerusalem as its capital on the lines of the 4th of June 1967. Mr. President, I would like also to reiterate my thanks to all the member states that voted in favor of the GA resolution that has been a translation of a principled position in the face of double standards in the application of international law and an affirmation to end war, protect civilians, and adhere to legal and humanitarian obligations, and in line with the principles and values that this organization was established to uphold, and towards the promotion of security and stability and peace in the region and the world. And now, after having concluded this statement on behalf of their group, I would like to say that there are countries that have committed atrocities in countries that they have occupied, but I have never ever heard that an occupying state claim to be the victim, to play the victim as Israel is doing now. I thank you, Mr. President. These remarks are in the national capacity.
I thank the permanent representative of Jordan for his statement. And the permanent representative of China has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give the floor to the permanent representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the U.S. representative in her earlier statement accused China of vetoing the draft resolution put forward by the U.S. I would like to respond to that. The U.S. representative accused China of vetoing the draft resolutions put forward by U.S. This is the most unreasonable words I have heard today. Put it simply, the United States wants China to be responsible for what's happening in Gaza today. And I have to tell the representative of the U.S. that we are not to blame for this. The U.S. representative should know very well that how the situation of the Middle East evolved. And the U.S. representative knows the best exactly what the U.S. did in the Middle East. The U.S. representative should also know very clearly that it is the U.S. that has vetoed the draft resolutions of the Security Council on Palestine and Israel, and that led to the difficulty of the Council to play a constructive, responsible role on this issue. And that has led to the Security Council being very difficult to do anything about promoting and implementing the two-state solutions. The U.S. representative should also be clear that China, together with many other countries, opposed the U.S. resolution. The U.S. hastily put forward the resolution after vetoing the resolution put forward by Brazil. But the U.S. draft resolution totally disregarded the strong call of the entire world for ceasefire and truce, especially that call from the Arab countries. That confused right and wrong and attempted to take the Palestine-Israel conflict to another narrative, to another path. What is more dangerous is this behavior will give a green light to the further escalation of the situation there. For that kind of draft resolution, China has all the reasons to vote in opposition to that. Our position on the vote is based on facts, law, conscience, and justice. It's also based on the strong call of the entire world, especially that of the Arab countries. The General Assembly later on adopted the resolution, and in that resolution, send a very clear, unequivocal message for the truce and stopping the fighting and prevention of the humanitarian crisis there. And this has got the strong and affirmative support of the overwhelming majority of the UN members. This adoption of the G8 resolution is another proof that China's position is entirely correct. I hope that the U.S. will earnestly adopt a responsible attitude and work together with members of the Council, focus on the most pressing issues, that is the ceasefire issue in Gaza, that is the protection of civilians issue, that is the humanitarian aid, the delivery of humanitarian aid, as well as the prevention of further humanitarian catastrophe. We hope on these pressing issues will consolidate our consensus so that the Security Council will take a more responsible action at an early date. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the permanent representative of China for his statement, and the representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give the representative of the United States the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be very brief. I just want, I think as the record shows, China cast a no vote on Wednesday, October 25, on the resolution put forward by the United States. That is a fact. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.